What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel where we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories. Now, guys, today we are going to jump into Ultimate Ironman. The reason why, because somebody reminded me that this storyline happened. I remember reading this as a kid, but for some strange reason, when I was making my Ultimate Marvel reading order, I completely forgot about Ultimate Iron Man. And so we're going to cut back over to Ultimate Iron Man and do his origin story, because technically his origin does take place before most of the Ultimate Marvel stuff. And so it's kind of important for us to go back and cover Ultimate Iron Man's origin story. So guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories in the near future. Guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. To begin today's storyline, we pick up years ago with Howard Stark, the father of Tony Stark. And this will be our first appearance of the character in the Ultimate Marvel universe for us. But we pick up with the character right now meeting up with Maria Sierra. And I hope I pronounce her last name correctly. The reason why Howard Stark is meeting up with Maria Sierra is to show her a new kind of armor. And this is not your usual kind of armor, because this armor is just made up of bacteria that is painted on a test subject, and this armor can protect the person from any form of harm, but also destroy the metal when it comes into contact with that metal. The major problem with this project is that the bacteria starts to eat the person's flesh after wearing it for 15 minutes. That is the reason why Howard Stark called over Maria Sierra, because she is working on something that could help someone regrow lost limbs. Howard Stark wants to combine their two projects together to make his new body armor work. We then pick up with Howard Stark's wife, Lonnie Stark, and also Zebediah Stane. This is where we come to find out in a couple pages that these two are working together to take away Howard Stark's company away from him. With Zebediah buying half the stock already, and Lonnie is planning to get a divorce to gather up the other half, which then these two will basically have full control of the company. Now we skip forward a couple months to the point where we find out Howard Stark and Maria Sierra are now a couple, and the divorce for Howard Stark and Lonnie Stark is in motion. But we pick up with Maria Sierra right now walking into her laboratory to work on her project. And we come to find out they are testing the monkeys first. Here's the thing, the monkey does not seem okay, because the serum was just supposed to regrow lost limbs or cells, but now it's growing new cells, and his little body cannot take it. But when Maria moves in to check up on the monkey attacks Maria, and some of his infected blood from the serum gets on Maria. Now at first, she starts to feel sick, and she thinks it's because of the monkey, but she comes to find out real quickly that is not entirely true. She comes to find out that she is pregnant with Howard Stark's child. At first, she does not want to believe it at all, but when she throws up because of the morning sickness, she can now confirm she is pregnant. The problem is now the serum she was working on is inside of her, and it could affect her baby as well, because this serum was not ready to be tested on humans just yet. As months pass by, we do see a couple things happen. One of the things that happen is that it is official. Howard Stark has lost his company to his ex-wife now, Lonnie Stark, and Zebediah Stane. This is a very important part right here for the whole Iron Man story, because we do see Lonnie Stark run over to become a couple with Zebediah. While that is going on, you have Maria trying to fight the serum that is inside of her, because her body cannot take it at all. But she now tells us that the serum has now infected the baby. Instead, with the baby, his neural tissue is changing. It is turning his whole nervous system into one huge brain. This explains Tony Stark being one of the smartest people in the Ultimate Universe. With his whole body being a living brain, he has a high level of memory capacity. But thanks to his mother's serum, he will always be in chronic pain. The only way to handle that pain is Howard Stark's armor. Tony Stark's body will literally be a living brain. But when Howard Stark runs back to the office to get his armor to give to his son to save his life, that is when you have Zebediah Stane walk into the laboratory to inform Howard Stark and the rest of the staff that he also now owns this project as well, which is very huge. But the thing is, as soon as Zebediah says that, the phone rings in the laboratory, and one of the doctors calling to inform Howard Stark that his wife, Maria Sierra, has died in the hospital. And that's the end of part 1. With Howard Stark hearing about the death of his wife, he rushes back to the hospital to check up on the baby. Of course, when he gets there, he sees the doctors delivering the baby and wonder what is wrong with him, because the baby is not crying. The baby is screaming because it is in pain right now. Remember, Maria said the baby will always be in chronic pain because the serum she was working on has infected the baby. And so you have Howard Stark rush into the room, takes the baby, and gives the baby his body armor to help deal with the chronic pain he is feeling right now. He then rushes out of the hospital, taking the baby with him and calling it Antonio, aka Tony. Now, the big part about this chapter right now comes up because we come to find out that Howard Stark made sure to never patent anything that has to do with the bio armor. So when Zebediah Stane took over the company, that is the one thing he was unable to get from Howard Stark. But we also find out that Lonnie Stark, the ex-wife of Howard Stark, is now pregnant with Zebediah Stane's baby. We then jump over to Howard Stark and Seema, and I really hope I pronounce her name correctly as well. To me, it is Seema. But right now they are boarding a boat to go into hiding, knowing that Zebediah will do anything to get everything he can to make his own body armor, his own bio armor. But as soon as Seema and Howard Stark leave by using the boat, we see Zebediah's men grab the other assistant from behind, which his name is Nero. Nero gets grabbed from behind by Zebediah's men and gets taken to some random location. And since Nero was there since the beginning of the project, Zebediah believes he can make Nero talk about how to remake the project. And so you have Zebediah use a new tech called the lid. Now this was made to drain all the information from somebody's mind, and it does do that to Nero. But the thing is though, it also lobotomizes him as well. Zebediah does send him back to Howard Stark as a message that he will sooner or later will find Howard Stark in the baby. We then jump forward 4 years and we see that Tony Stark is still wearing his blue bio armor to help deal with the chronic pain he is feeling since he was affected by his mother's serum. We also come to find out that Tony Stark has an IQ that can match a teenager, and he is only 4 years old, which is huge. Now the big thing about this part of the story, before we jump over to the next chapter, we come to find out that Zebediah is still controlling Nero. Even after 4 years has passed by, Zebediah made Nero through a mental connection to go into the room of Tony Stark and give him over to Zebediah's men without Howard Stark looking, because again, Tony is the only thing left of the bio armor project. And so you have Zebediah men take Tony Stark to this unknown location and try to use the same project on Nero, on Tony that was used on Nero, the lid project. Now, while Zebediah is trying to use the lid project on Tony, they come to find out it is not working because his whole body is his brain. And so the lid is only focusing on his head, which is only a small part of Tony's body. And so it's not working like it should. But before Zebediah is able to do anything else, out of nowhere, you have Howard Stark and a bunch of men, I guess are like special forces, barge into the room, take down everyone, and break Tony free. Now, while that was going on, somehow Tony Stark's right foot gets cut off. But after a couple moments have passed, Tony Stark's right foot regrows back. Now, we come to find out in a one-page setting is that Lonnie, the ex-wife of Howard Stark, but now the wife of Zebediah, had a son. And this is where we get introduced to Obadiah Stane, which in the main Marvel universe, he becomes the Ironmonger. But we learn that Lonnie and Obadiah Stane is saying goodbye to Zebediah because he is now locked up in jail. Now we do jump forward 10 years after the incident, and we pick up with Tony Stark when he is a teenager now. And he is going to a high-end school as a way for him to get the best education he can get. But again, Tony is smarter than all the other kids in the school. But we do get introduced to James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now when Tony meets Rhodey, he is right now being picked on by a bunch of kids for being different. Well, for him being black. But you have Tony kind of step in to save Rhodey from the kids. Now the big problem with Tony helping Rhodey is that he just made things worse, because those kids will come back again and do something worse because he stepped in to save him. But after getting some food together, they do become friends very quickly. We then jump over to James Rhodes and Tony Stark arriving back to Tony's house to show a project to Rhodey. This project is supposed to be some kind of armor that could help protect Rhodey from those bullies. But when they walk into the shed of the house, we see Lonnie has reappeared into the story, but she is looking for Howard Stark because she needs his help with her son. We jump forward to the big thing she needs. She wants to get her son Obadiah Stane to join a very secretive school. Only select students are able to get into. Howard Stark will regain the company he lost to her, but for her to give it back, he has to help her get her son into this very secretive school. We then jump forward to the next day, and we see that Tony wants to show Rhodey the project he is working on. And so you have Tony take Rhodey into the basement of the school to show the project off. The problem is that when Rhodey is putting on the armor that Tony made, the same bullies from earlier have reappeared, and this time they are going to test out Tony to see if he can heal from anything, which means they're going to try to throw him into the furnace that's in the basement. You have the bullies push Rhodey out of the way while they continue to mess with Tony Stark. You have the bullies pick up Tony and decided that they are going to throw him into the furnace to basically watch Tony burn up. That is when you have Rhodey get back up using the armor this time to help Tony and get rid of the bullies. The problem is that as soon as he finished beating up the bullies, a girl walks in the room to see the aftermath, which is the bullies on the ground passed out and bruised. But Tony's body has badly burned up to the point that half his body is mostly gone. And this young girl name is Nefara, but you have Tony call out to her and Rhodey to call his father. And when they call his father, you have Howard Stark tell Rhodey and Nefara to basically give Tony a bunch of water and food to help speed up the healing process. That is when you have the bullies come back with food and water, but then tell us, the readers, that somebody hired them to basically throw him into the furnace. That is when Rhodey tells them that somebody hired them to basically commit murder, and they were sent in as hitmen. Now, when Howard Stark gets there, he basically comes in, grabs his son to get him back home. But by the time Howard has gotten to the school, we see that Tony has completely healed up. You then have Howard Stark talk to Rhodey and Nefara about the fact that they were witnesses in this committed murder scene. And so with that right there, their lives are in danger. And so you have Howard Stark say he is going to send them to the best but secretive school known on the planet Earth, which is the Baxter Building. And this is us being tied into the Ultimate Fantastic Four side. If you remember my first video on the Ultimate Fantastic Four, we learned the Baxter Building is a school full of children working on big major projects, but these projects are weapons that will be given over to the military. But we pick up with Howard Stark taking all 3 children to the Baxter Building to protect them, because this school has guards all around them. There is no way anybody can break in and kill Tony, Rhodey, or Nefara. While they are riding the elevator up, they are introduced to Zebediah Stane. Now you can tell right off the bat that Zebediah Stane is crazier than his father. The reason why I say that is because while on the elevator, he touches Howard Stark's suit and picks off a small string of hair to use later on in the story. We then see Zebediah Stane trick 2 other students of the school to go outside to show them some new project of his. But in reality, it was a way for him to throw the 2 kids off the side of the building, which of course kills them. He gets away with their deaths by claiming that they were going to commit suicide as some kind of suicide pact. But he was trying to save them, as he says. But this is Marvel showing us how crazy and sick he is. We did get a small glimpse of the Iron Man armor, meaning that Tony has been working on the armor ever since he was a young boy. Now, with part 5 of this book, we come to find out a few things in this book actually. One of the first things we come to find out is that the War Machine armor is being made, but it's being made by James Rhodey himself, which is huge to see. Because in the main Marvel universe, Iron Man made the War Machine armor. But in this universe, you have Rhodey working on the armor right now as a young adult. Which, by the way, something else to point out, we are now at the point where everyone is a young adult, maybe in their early 20s. While James and Nefara are working on the War Machine armor, you have Tony still working on the Iron Man armor. It is still not ready yet to fly. Right now, all it can do is just hover, but also protect whoever's inside the armor from any form of harm. We also come to find out that Tony and Rhodey have made a deal where once they are both finished, each of them will give over the other person their project. But you have Howard Stark tell Tony that he will not do that because technically Howard Stark owns the Iron Man project. We then pick up with the prison that is holding Zebediah Stane in. Remember, he was locked up years ago for trying to kidnap Tony Stark when he was just 4 years old. But you have Zebediah right now doing kitchen duty for his prison. But you have a random man walk into the kitchen, shoot the guard who was watching over Zebediah in the head. You then have this man take Zebediah outside the prison, but to only use a device that will basically rip Zebediah in half, which of course would kill him off. We then jump back over to Howard and Tony Stark getting ready for some kind of dinner party. Now the topic does come up about Tony having an adult drink, but you have Howard say no, since drinking does affect the brain, and since Tony's body is completely his whole body, it could affect him in some kind of way. But while Howard Stark is talking to Tony, you have Howard Stark's assistant walk up and tell him about the whole Zebediah situation. But as soon as Howard walks away, that is when Tony grabs a drink. We then pick up with Howard Stark right now meeting up with his lawyers. Now, this is why I say earlier about the hair being picked off his suit by Obadiah Stane would play a big role, because that is when you have the lawyers talk about the device that was used, which ripped Zebediah Stane in half. But they also found one piece of hair on him, which of course belongs to Howard Stark. He is being framed for murder, which of course does put Tony Stark now in charge of the company. And that is how Tony Stark got control of the Stark company. But to wrap up this video, we do get a few more pages of Tony Stark kind of taking over his father's business, but while he's kind of, walking into the office, he does see a boat that has been taken over by a bunch of terrorists. And so he's kind of like, you know what? It's time for me to test out the new Iron Man armor. And so this is the first time we get to see Iron Man in the Iron Man armor. And he does go over there to save the people on the boat who is being held hostage. And so it's kind of like, okay, this is the ending for Iron Man 1. We end the storyline with Iron Man becoming the owner of Stark Corporations. The questions though, what happens next? And we don't find out until Iron Man Volume 2. The second half of Iron Man's story, and we'll cover that in a different video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below, and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see you on the next comic book video.